love and marriage the way that God intended. Life experience, here we share it. The Low Fruit Podcast. Tune in from any platform. Low Fruit Podcast will help your spirit transform.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. You are now listening to Maurice. Unfortunately, wifey couldn't be on this show, but we have a great show for you today. I am interviewing a certified parent educator who brings over 30 years of experience in parenting and expertise in the parenting education field. Her children are in their 30s, so they're just a little bit older than Catherine and I kids. So she knows exactly what she's talking about. She has conducted various teacher trainings for 8 schools across 5 states across India. She has been a past director of foster and kinship care education at Ventura College. She is recognized for her human compassion while teaching behavior and discipline tools that work at home and in the classroom. Without further ado, I now introduce to you Debbie Godfrey. Debbie, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Maurice, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Cool. I appreciate this wholeheartedly. My wife and I, we've been married for over 20 years. We have 2 kids, one that's 21, one that's 19. So we're not, our kids not quite as old as yours, right?
Right.
but close enough. So we're in that transition.
Be ready, the grandkids are coming.
And I can hold off on that for a moment.
Yeah. Well, I have 5 grandkids now, so once
Really?
they get to their 30s, that's when all that starts happening.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, right now they're both in school. They're both attending Temple University. So,
Congratulations.
thank you. And my daughter, she will be graduating this coming May. So we're looking
Fabulous.
forward to that. She's looking to get her doctorate in forensic psychology.
Ooh, how interesting.
Right. Right.
That's great.
So we're looking forward to that. My son he's a sophomore. So we still have a little bit more time to go with him. He's not quite decided.
Excellent. Good. Good for him.
But yeah, so we're working things out. But like I said, I had listened to before the interview, I had listened to a lot of your shows and your content and things like that. So one of the things I would like to point out to our listeners, how can a family create more closeness and connection despite even what's been going on with the pandemic, pre, post, all that type of stuff? What would you say to a family to create more closeness?
Well, it's so interesting because, many families got thrown together in the pandemic. Everybody came home to work, and I was teaching on Zoom at that point, and it was so interesting because some families really stepped into it of spending more time with the kids and being like, wow, this is different.
Right.
And some were completely stressed out and
Right.
it's like, get me out of here.
Right.
And, having to take the meetings out in the car. And it was every which way across the board. But one of the things that I've realized is that no matter whether it was before the pandemic or after, the way to create connection with our kids is to slow the heck down and just stop being so busy all the time.
Yeah.
Because what we're doing is we're running from this to that to this to that, and it's all about chores and duties and getting things done and getting the lunches and going here and going there, and there's no time for anybody to just be with each other and enjoy. So taking those moments, like in the morning, thinking about intending that 5 minutes of your morning, you just sit down and look at your kids.
Right.
Like, hey, what are you doing? And look in their eyes and breathe and just slow down. Like, you don't have to do anything for 5 minutes. And if you think you have to get up 5 minutes earlier to do that, then get up 5 minutes earlier and do that. It'll make a huge difference if you just spend time connecting without having 40 other things on your mind. And I think we can all do this anytime. I try to take the cue from the kids, because what happens is, and I'm around my grandkids a lot now, when everything starts escalating, you know, the kids start getting louder or yelling or fighting. I take that instead of, I mean, sometimes I get irritated, obviously,
right, of course.
knock it off. But if I'm in my positive parenting mode, I'll be like, these kids need connection. And so I'll shift gears from whatever, if I'm cooking or if I'm trying to clean up or I'm doing something, I'll just stop and I'll turn. It goes, oh, it looks like you need some playtime. And I'll go read or tickle or run around or take them for a walk, you know, like making that immediate shift into child zone is going to make so much more connection happen for families, for parents and kids.
So in that, because the children, again, I listened to one of your previous shows when you're not taking that 5 minutes or as you said, I believe that in one of those interviews, you had mentioned, hey, you know what? Let your kids know that I will be there in 10 minutes, but you know you'll show up in 5 or whatever it is, just to show that camaraderie or I'm really paying you attention, if you will. So how would you, as a parent, to start to practice those type of things of just being on time with their kids? Because if they're juggling so many things.
Well, yeah. And that's, I mean, the point of that, what you're referring to, it's called setting a temporary limit. And there's a tool that I teach called a genuine encounter moment. And this is where, and I guess this is kind of what I'm talking about. It's where you stop what you're doing and see the world 100% through your child's eyes. Well, there are times where your child comes to you and says, Mom, come look at this, or Dad, come look at that. And you really can't come right now. Like, you know, I've got something on the stove, it'll burn and I can't turn it off because it'll do something. Or if I'm on the phone or let's say I'm doing something that I really can't comfortably leave right now. Then I will turn to my child and I'll say, what you have to say or what you had to show me is really important to me. And I want to be paying 100% attention. And I need 10 minutes to finish cooking this thing on the stove. And then I'll be with you at 100%. And you be with your child in 10 minutes or less. Why, Maurice? Tell the audience why. Why are you going to be with them in 10 minutes or less and not 10 minutes and 2 seconds?
So, unfortunately, I will be there a little longer.
No, you won't. Not after this podcast.
And I'm saying that because, especially now that I've come to, I've had a revelation, I guess, with my son, because he's been dealing with depression and things like that. So at this current time, I want to spend more time with him, if you will, because I found out more information for me. And I understand everyone is not in my position, but that's the reason why I would do it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So you wouldn't even set the limit. You would just go straight to paying attention to it.
For me.
Okay. But the purpose, the purpose for setting the limit and then coming in on time or under time is to build trust.
Right.
Because if you tell your kids 10 minutes and you take 11 minutes, they're not going to trust you. And so they're going to keep interrupting you. They're going to keep monopolizing the time and make it difficult. Whereas if you tell them I'll be with you in 10 minutes, you come in at least 10 minutes or less. And like you must have heard whatever I said was if you come in 5 minutes, they're like surprised, like, oh my gosh, this is great. And they trust you even more. And so that's the point of this. It's not even that, it's less important whether you drop what you're doing and see the world 100% through their eyes or whether you set a temporary limit and then follow through and be on time. What's most important is that you're keeping your word and you're connecting with your child when you've said you would or when you do. That you're really, when you do what we call a genuine encounter moment and you stop and you pay attention to your child, you really want to be 100% in that moment. So making eye contact, enjoying, observing, noticing, not even thinking about the 50 other things that you have to do, like really focusing on your child. Like that's what makes the connection difference. I know it sounds crazy, but it does. Kids can tell when we only have half of our attention on them.
And you know, unfortunately, I believe because of society is so short, you know, with Instagram, YouTube Reels, and things like everything's so short, if you will, and we're in this microwave position. So what would you suggest for parents that are even working in that? When they even go to work, you're doing 100 jobs at one time. So how would you suggest a parent to, or give them any tips how to dumb that down a little bit to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to give you as close to 100% of my attention as possible. Do you have any tips or ideas for people to how they can handle that?
Well, I mean, we have to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are so busy that you don't have time to take a breath, and just like go through your life breathing,
Mm-hmm.
then your parenting is going to be off, and everything probably will be a little off. You'll be out of balance. So anything that you can do that slows you down, be present in the moment. Mindfulness is a big tag word out there these days. Back when
Yes.
I was younger, it was meditation. Whatever you need to do to breathe and slow down, that will bring you into the present. And when you're more present and you're breathing, you're more able to triage these situations and to see what's really important right now is not this dinner or this detail. What's important is sitting down on the floor and just hanging out with my kid for a few minutes. And in the times where you think it's least possible to do that, meaning the most stressful moments, that's when it's the most important for both you and your child. So your child will benefit because you're going to be stopping your steamroller into stress and agony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good for you because you're learning to switch back and forth between stressful life and parenting. Because parenting, to me, like children, it's a full-time job.
Yes.
A lot of people
Yes.
who work out of the home or work at home, they think, oh, I do this because, my kids are around. Well, you can't work and take care of your kids.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when they get a little older, obviously you can, but
Right.
to have an expectation that you can have toddlers around and be any kind of effectively focused on work for any amount of time is a huge setup for failure and
Mm-hmm.
frustration for a parent. And I think that's what everybody found out during the pandemic, especially dads
Right.
who work outside of the home. It's like,
Right.
oh my gosh, this is a nightmare. Like, no wonder you can't get all the dishes done and clean up and do 40 billion other things because these kids are demanding.
Right.
And, and it's not that they're demanding, but that's what the job is.
Mm-hmm.
A human child, like takes 5 years versus some of the animals in the wild. Like a horse gets up and runs within 30 minutes. All these other animals are up and able to kind of foray on their own pretty quickly, whereas humans take a lot more nurturing than most other animals do. And I think, sometimes we forget that we've got to nurture these kids, and it takes a person to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not you because you're working, you've got to hire somebody to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And, like you can't just allow a child to raise themselves. That doesn't work. And
Right.
so that's what we're expecting if we're trying to work and leave our kids sitting there.
Right. So question then. So, in those years, we talk about, people talk about the terrible twos, that type of thing. And so people tend to look at toddlers that they're defiant or destructive or whatever it might be, right? So what would be some ideas for a parent to handle a quote unquote defiant child or toddler, if you will?
Well, I don't choose to see it that way. I mean, what I see is that a child has needs
Mm-hmm.
that they're trying to get met, and they
Mm-hmm.
try to get those needs met through their behavior.
Right.
And so when you're talking about a child being defiant or resisting or being in a power struggle, you're talking about a child who feels powerless,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe they feel like they're not valuable, or maybe they don't feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to find ways to get that need met through their behavior. And that behavior is going to be often looked on by us as quote bad or
Right.
inappropriate.
Right.
But really their behavior is communicating I need something.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm looking at a 2-year-old who's being defiant, I'm looking at a 2-year-old or 3-year-old would be more likely,
Yeah.
who's saying, I don't feel powerful. Everybody's doing everything, and I'm 3 years old and I can do stuff. Give me
Mm-hmm.
something to do.
Right.
And I'll set that kid up on the counter and have him help me pour something or stir something. Or if we're doing some kind of chore, I've got my grandbaby now who's 2.5. He vacuums for me. Now,
Nice.
does he clean anything? No.
Right.
He makes a mess.
Right.
He messes up my vacuum cleaner. It's awful.
Right.
But
right.
you know what? He has so much fun vacuuming my house. And he's loving it, and he's helpful, and I'm acknowledging him for it. And as he gets bigger and older and more capable, he's going to maintain that spirit of loving to contribute. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if I were critical of him now or correcting him now when he's vacuuming and trying to clean up, if I was trying to make him do it like right at 2.5, that would be an age inappropriate expectation.
Right.
And it would be too much, and it would be discouraging him. And in the long run, he won't want to contribute because he's getting criticized too young for stuff he can't even do anyway. And so it's really important to pay attention to having age appropriate expectations for your kids. And I think nowhere does this come up more than with room cleaning.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of parents expect, 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds to just magically keep their rooms clean because they are capable of picking things up. I mean, they really are. And they love to pick things up.
Right.
It's super fun. I mean, even this little 2-year-old, he can pick stuff up. He can line stuff up. But doing it on our command they're not quite ready for that yet. They're ready to pick the stuff up when it's fun and they're in the middle of doing it. And so we want to latch into those moments of their contributing, acknowledge them, do it with them, and not punish them for it. And keep the spirit of wanting to contribute alive as they get older, and we can train them for more and more responsibility.
Wow. I appreciate that. So here's the reason why I asked that question. I listen to just parents that are new parents, if you will, especially during this pandemic. I listen to them. They felt like their children were defiant. They felt like their children were not listening to them, and they were running out of patience a lot of times. So I coach football and basketball, youth football and basketball. So a lot of their little brothers and sisters I get to see on the court or the field, and and I see parents getting very, very frustrated a lot of times. That's the reason why I asked that question, because I think they're not sure of how to handle them in similar situations, like you said, picking things up or just assisting, giving them a simple task. Understand that, hey, it's not going to be done 100%, but at least it'll be fun for them to get accomplished.
Yeah, and sometimes I have to shift. Like last night, the grandbaby I asked him to put his toys away, and he was like, no. And I was like, okay, I don't want to get in a power struggle with him right now, but I do want him to put his toys away. And what am I going to do? And so I had to think really fast. It's like, okay, I'm going to move your toy basket over here, and I'm going to toss I tossed one of the little cars in there. And I'm like, I'm going to toss a car. Now you toss one. Mm-hmm. And he just lit up. All excited. And, it was just like the simple little shift of changing the game.
Right.
Like, it's not, I'm making you do something. It's we're having fun cleaning up this thing here. And, I'm always trying to figure out ways to just shift a little bit so that I'm still getting accomplished what needs to get accomplished, but I'm not overpowering the child so much that they're so discouraged that they don't want to do anything. Mm-hmm. And, there's so many opportunities every day that we have for this. So notice if you ask your kids to do something and they immediately go to no, and most kids won't say no, because most of you parents are pretty strict about this. Like if they said no, they'd probably, get walloped. Now the kids know I'm not going to do that to them, but so they can be a little bit more defiant. But at the same time, I don't stand for it either. It's just that I'm not going to hurt them over it.
Right.
And so I'll stop and I just honestly, I look around the room almost in desperation, but not quite, more for an opportunity of okay, what can I do to make this a little more fun? And it depends on the kid's age. You know,
Right,
I'll do
right.
something different with a 3-year-old than a 6-year-old. You know, the 6-year-old, it might be, you know, gosh, it would make me so happy, and so it would be so fun if you were willing to do this for me. And I know you don't really want to, and I get that. And then the kid usually will do it, you know, and I have a billion different ways, different
Nice.
ways of trying to what I call win their cooperation without forcing it on them. Because if it comes of their own volition, then it's much better than if I force them into it. That's just a setup for later defiance.
Wow. Wow. I thank you very much. I really thank you, Debbie, you know, for your insight today. I really do, because it not only helps the parents, but now, again, my kids are older. So as I'm dealing with some of these youth, you know, if you will, just trying to help them redirect ideas, or even those other parents that I talk to say, hey, Maurice, how can I do this, that, and the other? I have an idea of how to redirect them or coach them through the process. I thank you, Debbie.
Right.
I thank you. But here's the thing, though. Here's the question, though, I have for you. Where can people find this information that you're sharing with us today? How can they contact you, follow you, things like that? How can they get more information from you?
Yeah, so I'm at positiveparenting.com. It's my website. And I do have a podcast. I'm not actively uploading now, but there's over 100 or 200 and something episodes, and they're 5-minute positive parenting pep talks. So you can go in and just search for whatever topic or subject you need help with and get a 5-minute boost, and, you know, about all kinds of things. And power struggles are in there. 2-year-olds are in there. 3-year-olds are in there. Everything with the kitchen sink's in there.
Nice.
And also on Instagram at Positive Parenting Debbie.
Cool. Thank you very much, Debbie, for coming on the show today. I greatly
You're
appreciate
welcome, and thanks
it.
for having me. It was a blast. Yeah.
Sure, no problem. Please, everyone, please follow Debbie. Listen to the podcast. Google her, YouTube her. She's all over the place. Wonderful personality, as you hear. Way more information than we have today, but I really want y'all to get a taste of it, so you can go and find her and get more information. Debbie, thank you very much.
And thank you so much for having me, and thanks for the work that you're doing with parents.
Thank you very much, and make sure y'all tune in for our next episode, y'all.
This week's episode has come to an end, but the fun doesn't have to stop here. If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback, head over right now to Twitter and Facebook and like, share, and get involved. Join us next time.